conversations have been riveting, and particularly the last one did throw up some very interesting challenges or dilemmas that policymakers are going to have to face, and of course industry will need to watch for. But let's take that conversation forward. Ashish, thanks very much for joining us here this evening. Let me start by where we have left the conversation and ask you about what Honeywell is trying to do as far as the India opportunity is concerned, and also cope with India's unique challenges. 2023-24 has been a milestone year for Honeywell in India in many ways, a record number in terms of what you've been able to deliver from India in terms of sales, the highest ever. First of all, explain to us, as you look at the India opportunity and this energy transition, what looks most exciting to you?
Yeah, I'll start with a little bit of background, apart from the energy transition. In terms of where Honeywell is focused and Honeywell India is focused, there are three mega trends that we have defined. The first one is energy transition and sustainability, and this is a global trend, and I think very relevant in India, and we've been talking about this all evening. The second one is around automation. If you look at Honeywell, we are a 100-year-old automation controls company, and I think what's different is the whole digital and AI piece. So we are very bullish on that, and that's a mega trend that's driving our growth the way you described it. The third one is future of aviation. We are big into aviation, and there is element of energy transition there as well. That is a mega trend. The two more that I will add in the Indian context that we see is infrastructure growth and Make in India. And then if I look at the India landscape and what's driving our growth is these five macros. Coming back to energy transition, of course, Honeywell, and we've been talking about the three panels, we have several technologies in that. But I'll break it down into three core segments, the way we think about energy transition. The first one is, of course, a lot of technologies in various sectors, whether it's green hydrogen, whether it's battery storage, whether it's carbon capture, whether it is flow batteries, all the technologies that come along with it. The second piece that we haven't really spoken about all evening is materials, sustainable materials. Yes. That's a big piece in our storyline, if you will. We have technologies that replace plastic, for example. There is a big mandate around single-use plastic ban, and we have a replacement for that, for example. We have technologies that can replace hydrofluorocarbons, which are refrigerants, which are extremely hard on the environment, for example. Yeah. And then we have technologies which can turn plastic into roads, for example. So we think about sustainable material as a big part of the equation. And the third one is around economic models. And I can talk about that more, but we think about it very holistically when we think about the green energy transition. Sorry, long answer, but I covered a lot of ground.
I like the fact that you've given me plenty of food for thought and plenty of issues to dive right into. So let's pick up on the automation lever that you spoke of, which is one of the mega trends and one of the pillars that you're focused on in the context of India and in the context of this move towards AI and now Gen AI. How are you marrying the two, and what looks exciting on that front as we move forward?
Yeah, I think that's a big lever, and everybody has been talking about it. I think, first of all, I would say that we've been using AI for many, many years.
Yes.
I think this became a buzzword now, but the reality is that as controls company, we've been using it in some form or fashion for many, many years. Because a lot of our solutions have to be...
But Gen AI specifically?
Well, those are words you can add in front of it, but we call it deterministic AI, which means that your AI should give you a definite answer that the plant can run at, the flight can use. You cannot be like, 80% accurate and that's good enough. So we think of this more in terms of deterministic AI. Now, what we are doing differently, Shireen, is that for us, what's different a little bit is AI has become a centerpiece of all our products, all our technology. I cannot think of any product or technology that we are developing today that does not have embedded AI. Almost 100%. And that's become a very, very centerpiece of our theme. The other piece I'll say is that a lot of our automation solution in the context of energy transition will help solve the demand side of the equation, which means that if you control better, if you automate your processes, you consume less energy.
Right.
You run more efficiently. And by virtue of that, you reduce your energy consumption. And that's a big part of the equation. If you look at the energy efficiency itself, that can solve a lot of problems. So you just don't produce carbon, and that will solve the problem. So that's the way we think of automation in the context of.
Let me pick up on the other two aspects that you spoke of, infrastructure and Make in India. And the infrastructure story, especially in a post-COVID era in India, has been driven largely by the government. The expectation and the hope is now that we will start to see the private sector deliver on that as well. On the Make in India side as well, we've been stuck at that manufacturing share to GDP of about 15% for the last decade or so. And again, the expectation and the aspiration is to take it to 2020 plus. Now, how would you play both those? How do you see the opportunities opening up on both those fronts in India?
Yeah. Look, we have been in India for 100 years, we like to call it, and definitely for more than around 40 years. And so we are very entrenched in the way we operate in India. Make in India is become important because of the government push today. We have a very methodical, we have 3 manufacturing plants, which we manufacture for India and we also export, and that's what we've been doing for ages. Now we are very focused in thinking through every product line that exists that we sell in India to be Make in India. And that's a function of the volumes that we can sell in India, and that determines the economics of whether or not we bring that product or that line into India. And we carefully go through that exercise every year for every product line to figure out whether or not we would make it in India. We recently announced a line for making airport guidance lighting system here, for example, just 6 months ago, which is huge for us. These are the blue and the green lights that you see on the runway when you land in. So we continue to bring in more and more products in India to be compliant to what the government bids are and the government requirements are, but to also justify our cost point as we operate in the India market. That's how we think about it. You were talking about airports and lighting systems that you're working on, and you also talked about aviation as being one of the big focus areas in the context of the sustainable fuel. How do you see the Indian aviation story? It is a fast-growing market, but it's also a duopoly at this point in time. The viability itself of many airlines is in question, and we've seen the Indian aviation market emerge as a cautionary tale of what often tends to happen. So given where things are today, how do you see the Indian aviation sector opening up, and what is the kind of potential and headroom for growth that you see on the fuel side as well, given that? We are very bullish. I mean, if you think about, and I was talking to somebody this morning, giving them the statistic, and it doesn't dawn on you until you hear the statistic. The reality is, India became free in 1947, and we added 728 aircrafts in the time since independence.
Yeah.
India has 1,500 aircrafts on order as we speak.
Yeah.
In the next 3 years to 4 years, you will have 2,200 aircrafts, which means that we'll triple the current capacity. And we'll add 2x the capacity that we are. So, and that's all done deal. This is not theory. This is the Air India aircrafts and Indigo aircrafts on order that are starting to be delivered. And from our perspective, we supply equipment to these aircrafts. So therefore, obviously, we are very bullish on the segment itself. So there's absolutely no question that this segment and this sector will do very well because of the aircraft that are on order. And to complement and supplement that, if you look at the number of airports that the government has added in the last 10 years. Now we have 152 airports, I think, in the country, and there's aspiration to add another 100 or so. And therefore, the infrastructure that goes to support the aviation sector is coming in place. So there's absolutely no reason to believe that this will not take off.
No, it has taken off.
It has taken off, and I think that's already done deal. From the fuel side, and you mentioned SAF, I think that maybe I think the minister alluded to that a little bit. You know that there are CORSIA requirements for airlines to comply to starting 2027, which means that the airlines coming in, or the aircrafts coming into India will have to have, if they were to refuel in India, would have to have a certain blend of SAF. And to that extent, India is obliged or will be compelled to have SAF in the mix there. And we think that that will take off 2027, 28. There is an intention by the government to for a 1% and 2% blend in 2027 and 28. They've said that already.
Yeah.
And therefore, SAF becomes real at that point. We provide a lot of technology for SAF. You give us any feedstock and we will make SAF out of it. That's the way to think about it. You can take carbon dioxide, add hydrogen, make methanol, and then make SAF. You can take biomass and make SAF. I mean, we have like a lot of ways to make SAF. So we are very excited about the possibility that when SAF becomes real, we will have the technology to do it.
So SAF becoming a reality in 2027 and beyond. But let's talk about something that the government is very excited about. And we heard the minister, in fact, both ministers talk about it and highlight that as a priority for the government. And that is green hydrogen and the green hydrogen mission, which has been sort of put in place and the execution roadmap has been laid out as well. How do you read that story?
We just did a panel on this, and I was on the panel, so I think I've said already I've shared my thoughts. Look, I think first of all, we have to applaud the government on the initiative with the $2.8 billion of PLI schemes that they have announced on the electrolyzer side. We see a lot of momentum, a lot of action, a lot of activity in the space of electrolyzer manufacturing itself. For the hydrogen, the green hydrogen space, I think, and we discussed this again in the panel, the question of cost is a very important one.
Yeah.
And unless you hit that cost point of whatever, $2 or $4, whatever you would call it, is a very, very important hurdle to cross. And I believe that once you cross that hurdle, I think you can really build a hydrogen economy. For India, it's a great strategy because the biggest cost in hydrogen is actually electricity or energy. And India has abundant solar. And because you have abundant solar, you can afford to make green hydrogen and not have to go through this curve of let's do blue and then let's go green. And therefore, it's a great strategy. But it's a hard strategy to execute. Because not only do you have to get the cost curve down, you also have to have the infrastructure around it. Hydrogen is a very difficult gas to handle. It's not safe. It can escape very easily. A lot of the infrastructure is not fungible with hydrogen. And therefore, a lot of the infrastructure downstream would have to be built to really make hydrogen work. But if it works, it solves, and the minister spoke emphatically about 88% import. I absolutely hates it. And so do we and the country, because it's a huge burden on the exchequer. And therefore, if hydrogen really comes through, it's great for the country.
Well, speaking of what is great for the country is not just make in India, but it's also develop an IP in India. And in the context of Honeywell and future innovations, and I heard Gavin talk a little bit about that and the kind of work that's happening here in India. Take us through the plans on that front as well. And, the exciting breakthroughs that are being driven out of India globally for Honeywell.
Yeah, sure. We have about 13,000 employees in the country. Half of them are R&D engineers that are developing products and technologies not only for the globe, but for India, of course. And India is the second largest R&D center outside of US for Honeywell. So obviously India, and we made this investment 30 years ago. This is our 30th year of making that investment in R&D. So we have a lot of capability, and we're not just a back office doing what US told us to do, to be honest. We do a lot of original research out of India for the globe and for India. The other fact that I would like to share with you is that 60% of Honeywell's R&D is spent on technologies that will drive an ESG outcome. 60% of our R&D. And that's also true for what we spend in India. And therefore, a lot of our technologies, I spoke about green hydrogen, I spoke about SAF, I spoke about the battery energy storage, and so on and so forth, carbon capture. A lot of these technologies were developed out of our R&D center in Gurgaon. And that's just, when we share this fact with a lot of people, they scratch their head, but that's the reality. Now, a lot of these technologies are now being implemented around the globe, and we hope that they will soon be deployed here in India in our backyards, and that's our hope. So we have a great capability here, that we're using to develop technologies for the globe and for India.
And we hope and look forward to hearing much more from you on that front. I think that does deserve a big round of applause for the fact that there's a lot that's actually going on that's happening out of Gurgaon for Honeywell globally as well. But let me end then by asking you, Ashish, we talked about the opportunities, but let's also leave the participants in the room here with what you believe will be some of the key challenges that we need to grapple with, both at a policy front as well as from a private sector point of view. And of course, getting the right economic model in place across different sectors will be one of the key aspects. What are some of the other challenges you believe we need to grapple with?
Look, the one we haven't talked about is capability. A lot of the skills that are needed to develop these technologies don't exist. I mean, take semiconductor, for example. That's not an energy transition subject, but it's a massive focus by the government. And what we are finding increasingly is that we just don't have that capability. And the challenge will not be whether or not we can make the technology, but the question is, will we have the skill and the capability and the workforce to really develop that technology and also deploy the technology?
Yeah.
So I think, to me, if one thing that will fail us is not being able to develop the capability within our organizations into the broader ecosystem to be able to build these technologies and deploy these technologies. So I'll leave it there. The challenges are many. I can go on and on for another 30 minutes on the challenges, but I think this is one that I would point out for the audience.
We'll have you back to spend another 30 minutes on the challenges, but that's an important one, and I think that there is also an acknowledgement and a recognition on the part of policymakers that is going to be one of the crucial aspects. In fact, the budget focused on developing some of these capabilities that you speak of, but thank you very much for giving us a glimpse, a sneak peek into what's going on at Honeywell, and more importantly, how India is shaping up as far as Honeywell is concerned. We look forward to hearing a lot more from you. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. Thank you very much, Ashish, for joining us here this evening. Thank you so much.